Okay, yeah, great question. So currently in Lightning, if you're making like a multi-hop payment, right, or any payment, you have this like identifier, this hash, right, called called the payment hash, and that is like that goes along the whole chain of the payment. So if there's two nodes somewhere on that like chain and they speaking to each other, they can like say, the same payment is coming through both of us, and they can do some analysis there. With PTLCs, that identifier will be different. So that like hides your payment a bit and prevents this thing called a wormhole attack. So currently there's, if two people on the chain are the same, they can almost, one person gets the pre-image and they can kind of give it to the other person they know earlier on in the chain, skip everybody in between, so everybody in between loses all the fees they would have gotten, and they've just scored a few bucks there. So yeah, with PTLCs, that's also avoided.
Okay, very interesting. That's super cool. So what do you guys think is like beyond, say, like splicing and taproot channels and PTLCs? What do you think is like going to be the next big privacy improvement? I mean, those three are pretty awesome, already, but is there something else too on the horizon? Like,
I think that the marriage of splicing and taproot channels will be an awesome boost for privacy. When those two things happen together, that's going to be awesome. Because like splicing is essentially a coin join, and taproot hides the channel state. So if you get large splice joins with multiple channels going through it and other payments that all look the same as any other generic payment, like the privacy boost of them working together is just insane. And it's going to be awesome.
Right. Yeah, I'm so excited about that. I think that's going to be wonderful. What do you guys think, like, compared to, say, like Monero or something like that? Will it be comparable in terms of like the heuristic, its defense against that type of like, timing analysis or like any other like chain analysis, stuff like that?
Personally, I'm skeptical. I think there's a lot of wins in making all the UTXOs relatively indistinguishable other than amount. But I think it's definitely a worthwhile endeavor, and I think, and I'm really, glad to see the advances there, especially with taproot channels, PTLCs, and splicing. But there's been some pretty good work. Matthew Green, I think, no, actually, it was Ian who used to work on Zcash. He had a really interesting presentation on a few years ago at a conference. I can't remember what it was, but basically just illustrating that, like, no matter what, if you can see amounts and you have the clustering heuristic, even with like coin joins and stuff, you can still get a lot of information. So I don't know that we'll ever solve the problem to close to like cryptographic level privacy. That's my own take. Maybe others disagree with me, which would be great.
Yeah, maybe not. Does anyone disagree or no?
I mean, I feel like it's almost kind of a philosophical question, right? Like how do you define what is truly private without playing out the war games, right? We're kind of just guessing how they would play out. But I imagine some scenarios where we get signature aggregation, let's say, as a soft fork to Bitcoin. And then like imagine a world where every block was just one transaction where all of the inputs and outputs were mixed together. You start to get pretty damn close to indistinguishable from anything else. And yeah, you won't get the same benefits as hiding amounts, but you get like other benefits. And I suspect philosophically, I don't have evidence that it's going to end up being just as private.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question of like what's the sort of security game. Like when you analyze, a cryptographic profile, you sort of have like the adversary game and you define it, and the sort of it should be sort of like typically there's some sort of like criteria where like whatever you see is indistinguishable from random, and the adversary has no like only has like a negligible advantage in the game. I haven't seen like that defined for Bitcoin privacy, which maybe that's an interesting work for someone to do.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's super interesting. Cool. So my next question that I had sort of on the agenda was, what do you guys think are the biggest challenges ahead in terms of like adoption and general usability for Lightning? And how can we overcome them? And maybe we could start with Alex.
Which one?
River Alex.
Okay. Alex Bosworth is definitely higher signal than me, so I was assuming you're referring to him. I think so. I think one of the main challenges from that I'm seeing, just from like, maybe I can give a bit more of a business perspective than a protocol perspective. I think a lot of the sort of incumbent institutions, like their product roadmaps and priority lists have like lots of stuff, right? A lot of these companies like multi-coin exchanges, they have lots of things they need to do. Lightning is like something they're interested in. But I think we need to do a better job at like pitching them on like the why and like the UX win for their customers. So that's definitely like one of the challenges that I see, and that's a problem we're trying to work on at River is sort of like really packaging Lightning as a really like high value business sort of initiative to try and pursue with our Lightning infrastructure business. On the protocol side, I definitely think, and I'm by no means sort of the most sort of educated on this, but I do think there's like one thing I haven't seen lots of analysis on is like the economic challenges of non-custodial mobile Lightning wallets. It requires like potentially like lots of capital lockup for these LSPs, and I think there's still like an unanswered sort of economic viability question for that, and like what routing fees would they need to charge to justify locking up capital with sort of like unknown requirements for these sort of mobile recipients. So that's also something that I think there's like lots of work left to do to figure out.
Yeah, I love that point. And I think in general, we're going to see a lot more improvements in Lightning self-custody going forward, particularly with things like the remote signing work being done to separate keys from nodes. I think that's going to help a lot. And stuff that 𝗟𝗏 is doing and LDK with these like zero comp splices to get liquidity on demand for when people want to receive stuff. I think that, and like there's a whole bunch of other things that are kind of in that ballpark that are just going to slowly make self-custody Lightning just like better and better and easier for users in the coming years.
Awesome. Yeah, it seems like the non-custodial mobile use case is like really the challenge, but also the opportunity. What about Alex Bosworth? What do you think? Have any thoughts?
I think like that one thing is kind of to think about the network utility. So Lightning as a solution is it's its own network. So the more people who join the network, the more useful it is. But if we're right at the beginning of it and only a small percentage of people within Bitcoin or only a small percentage of people within the world are on the network, then the utility is so limited. So I think there's some like degree of patience where it's like, yeah, we're adding, it's becoming more and more useful. But on the flip side of that also, I think sometimes as you have a community or, a set of people grow, you can have problems of scale pop up, even just like within the processes. So like if you had a very popular like web forum or something, you may notice as you got more people, like the web forum started empty and then there's a bunch of people chatting in the web forum. Then, we have so many people in the web forum, there's like fighting going on and it's not working out. So I think like managing that scale up so that we don't hit those bottlenecks is kind of like the a thing that I think is important, like even just setting foundations so that like as we grow, we kind of have a roadmap ahead where we're not going to hit those things.
Right. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And like the coordination too seems super important of development and whatnot. What about you, El? What do you think?
Yeah, so I can speak more from a perspective of like, you know, I live in a third world country, right? So we like developing this technology that's awesome that we say is going to be, you know, very useful for people like living in third world countries because, you know, that's where hyperinflation is bound to happen first kind of thing. And yet I think for many places, like it's just, or for many communities, that's just not realistic yet. Like, you know, people first of all, aren't really educated and they may not have internet access, may not even have smartphones, right? So there's like a lot of communities like that. So there's a lot of unanswered questions there. So there obviously are things like Fediment, which is going to make things like that easier. 𝗏𝐻𝐿𝐴 is a great example of like a community that is actually using Lightning, which is fantastic. But there's still a lot of unanswered questions with regards to infrastructure for this thing that kind of needs internet access the whole time, and like, you know, keeping keys safe and all these things. How do you do that in like a informal settlement where you don't know who you can trust, kind of thing? Yeah, so I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done there.
Agreed, 100%. I see Ziggy is up here. Ziggy, got any thoughts on this one?
So hello everybody. So you mean at the non-custodial side? So I found what I had a thought last time where for example Phoenix is kind of pushed as the go-to non-custodial wallet, for me at least. And then lately I thought actually 𝐓𝐿 has not really a watchtower implemented yet, as far as I can tell. So basically, 𝐓𝐿 or the async, the big node, could potentially just broadcast old states, and all these mobile wallets, which are most of the time offline, I guess, would just get ripped of their money. So in a sense, I see the custodial side, this argument, pretty premature currently, because we have not real solutions currently, or all this infrastructure, as Alice said, up where we really can support this non-custodial future of Lightning. So that's why I don't really understand those disagreements in the community. Hey, we have to push those users to the non-custodial side. For me, currently Lightning is perfectly safe and fine custodially, and the user experience is very great. So I'm a bit hesitant to call for or push for the non-custodial side, just looking at the technical difficulties currently.
Yeah, I love the point about watchtowers, right? Like it's the part of Lightning that gets no buzz, right? Nobody's like raving about, yeah, new watchtower features, and yet it's so critical that we do it right anyway, right? And I think I take your point on that.
Dusty, do you think you could just give like a quick like TLDR on just what a watchtower even is and why it's important?
Oh yeah, I can give like the 2-year-old version or whatever. Basically, Lightning is a trustless thing where you can move your funds around on Lightning. It's not trusting anybody else, any custodians, as long as you're monitoring the network. So like if you're offline, or if you're using an app that's just closed most of the time, you're not actively monitoring. And so you need this monitoring to be going on in order for all the security assurances that, you know, we've made possible with Lightning to continue to apply to you. And Watchtower is the name we give for kind of outsourcing it. Being like, all right, your job is to like watch the network and just tell me if anything wonky is going on with my money. And the Watchtower sits there and just does that. And they're also given authority to do certain kinds of what we call justice to get your money back. So like, you know, in this example, he's saying that 𝐓𝐿 would go and try to steal all their customers' funds. the watchtower would be given like a token that can do one thing and one thing only, which is steal back from a player if they steal from you, right? That kind of thing. And so like having watchtowers that are reliable, cross-implementation, robust, ideally multiple watchtowers, that's what makes these self-custody solutions really, truly self-custody. And, I think to his point, like watchtowers just don't get a lot of excitement and hype, but they are like really important sort of like laundry we got to do as a Lightning development community and make sure it's working really robustly.
Right. Seems important. We'll have to write a thread about that one. Awesome. Well, so I put a tweet up in the nest from Nifty from the other day. From this, I don't even know how to explain it. I think it's the DMCA or something like that. They released, or no, it's like the Bank of International Settlements Innovation Hub released this video about this strange protocol, sort of like using HTLCs with 4x to essentially implement like this retail CBDC. And it looks absolutely ridiculous. It's like kind of funny, honestly. But what do you guys think about like the idea of like, HTLCs being implemented by it seems kind of dumb, because if it's a centralized centralized system, why even use a smart contract when you could just override it anyways? So what do you guys think about like lightning CBDCs, I guess, and the co-option of the tech?
Well, I mean, first reaction is hilarious. Centralized government lightning kind of ruins the whole point of doing it all. I don't know. I mean, if I try to steel man it, maybe they get some database cost savings by like offloading transactions.
Honestly, I don't have a lot of strong opinions about this. I don't like the idea of CBDCs, but I don't really understand how they plan to use the tech. So I don't know that I have a ton of insight here personally.
Yeah, no worries. Kind of a shot in the dark. I thought it was just kind of interesting. But yeah, I agree, Dusty. It's kind of ridiculous, in my opinion.
But funny, I don't know, if you want to get government funding for a random crypto project, I guess they pulled it off.
Okay, so what do you guys think about, just moving on, this idea that like custodial solutions for Lightning can sort of serve as like a bridge, like an onboarding bridge, to essentially have a better UX than like something like a CBDC to compete and then, eventually just overtake it completely. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I got lots of thoughts. I'll go if no one else wants to. I view us as we're in this race that like is between custodial and non-custodial Bitcoin. And they're both advancing together. And the custodial side has it way easy, right? They can implement every feature, have things be quick, scalable, no problem. And everything on the non-custodial side is just pain and effort and challenge and work. And you have to work so much harder to get to like not even the same level, but close to it of custodial solutions. But I think that's the fight worth fighting, right? Like the custodial, non-custodial solutions are never going to be equal, right? Like, okay, the custodial, non-custodial solutions are never going to be equal. Like it's always going to be at least a little bit worse to custody your own funds. It's flat out. Then the goal is to like minimize that difference to like as little as possible. That's the goal as I see it anyway. And like that's just a constant struggle to try to pull it off. Now I think the risks with custodial solutions are they're going to be like on a micro scale, easier to use. Like onboarding will be easier. There's less steps. You don't have to back up a key, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the long tail risks are way worse. Like these custodial solutions can just take everyone's Bitcoin, right? And I worry if we let people go too custodial, then that like don't understand what's going on. They're like, all right, I can use Bitcoin. This works well. And then one day, like, you know, say something horrible happens, like 30% of those users all lose their money, just gone. Are those users going to be more likely to learn custodial self-custody solutions then, or are they more likely to say, fuck Bitcoin, I'm out, you know? And I worry it'd be a lot more of the second than the first.
Yeah, right. I guess it's like, it becomes kind of like a educational problem, you know, where people don't even realize the difference, and then say they get wrecked, then they just think, oh, Bitcoin was a scam after all, and they just never understood it in the first place.
Yeah, it's like a time preference question, right? Do we want the easy wins today, or do we want to build a long-term solution that will be sustainably good for people?
Yeah, agreed.
My personal take is I kind of see custodial Lightning as something we know works pretty well. And it's sort of like the known quantity at this point. And I do think it's worth investing in as a win. I think likely, I don't know, personally, like I still think like today, the current state of things is on-chain self-custody is the most mature, and it's the easiest to push people towards who really want to like fully control their wealth. But for people who just want a really smooth, seamless transactional experience, custodial Lightning wins out, and you don't have to have like all of your money like in an exchange or to do that. So I don't know. I think there's like a middle ground somewhere here, and that I think Lightning, you know, like it just for the foreseeable future, just custodial Lightning is just going to be way simpler for people.
I was wondering whether we could kind of more rigorously evaluate those custodial solutions. Like, I mean, they have to be part of the Lightning Network. They have to have liquidity locked into channels. So essentially, I'm just right now thinking whether one could maybe probe them in a way and see how much funds do they really have stuck in their channels. So there might be possibilities where we could really not just say non-custodial, custodial, like put it in a box like binary 0-1, but there are also possibilities to evaluate those custodials essentially. So that's also something one can keep in mind.
Yeah, I think realistically most, fintechs that are custodial, whether they're exchanges or other apps, they'll have like most of the Bitcoin under custody on like in some custody solution that isn't on Lightning, and then their Lightning Bitcoin will be either their own node or like a third-party service, with a small fraction of the assets under custody. So I think getting a full picture of how much Bitcoin they have and whether it matches liabilities is going to be actually harder. Like it's actually like in a world where exchanges also offer Lightning, doing proof of reserves actually even gets more complicated because now you have Bitcoin like in two different structures effectively. So just like it's kind of like an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, one that what I've been working on, splicing, totally solves, right? That's one of the awesome things that splicing is going to do is unify those balances, so you can make on-chain payments from your Lightning balance directly.
Very cool.
What do you think in terms of like, and this could be a good question for you, Alex from River. What do you think in terms of like regulation of custodial applications like Wallet of Satoshi, for example? Like, are they going to have to be like regulated like a bank pretty much?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, and so none of this is should be taken as legal advice. I mean, I'm not going to speak to a specific company. The reality is like sort of for us at River, we operate in the United States. We offer, services that allow people where we're storing value on behalf of individuals who are transferring it to third parties, which is defined as money transmission, and makes us a money services business at the federal level. So, I would basically I expect, the government to regulate this activity. They already do for us. And so that's just how the rules are structured. Unfortunately, there aren't really it's not like the law is oh, if it's less than $10, you don't need to worry about all this. It's more just all this sort of ambiguous risk-based sort of thing. And so, should a wallet in the U.S. that's custodial, but people are just using it for sending small amounts of money on Lightning, be regulated? Honestly, probably not. But legally, by the letter of the law, it's kind of, yes. So it's a gray area. The regulators aren't really all that caught up on Lightning, and there's no one of the most frustrating things about regulations in this industry is just no one has all the answers, and neither do the regulators. So that's sort of just the reality today.
Right. Super interesting. Okay, I had a question. Maybe this would be good for you, because I know you mentioned Taproot, the update to Gossip, basically, that will need to take place for Taproot channels. So what has to happen in order for Taproot channels to be gossiped, I guess? What needs to happen to the Gossip protocol?
Yeah, sure. Good question. So basically, currently, with Lightning channels, the outputs are pay-to-script hash, and they're just a 2 of 2 multisig. And basically, what we do when we announce that channel is we announce all the parts of that output that everybody needs to, so that everybody on the network who wants to confirm that it is a channel can check. This is actually a 2 of 2 multisig, and it belongs to this node and this node. Cool, I'm happy to put it in my graph and use it as a channel. So that is how things currently work, right? So we have this quite strict list of things we want to check in a channel announcement to make sure cool, I'm happy to put this to say that this is a channel and use it. But with Taproot, right, the outputs look completely different. So it's literally just one key that's on chain, and who knows what's in that key. So, and it's really hard to kind of prove what's in the key. So first of all, the messages we currently use don't work for this, right? So nodes will, if we used the current set of Gossip messages and we, broadcast a Taproot channel and announced it with these messages, nodes would get it and they go I don't know what to do with this. I'm not going to use this channel. So we needed a whole new set of messages for Taproot channels. So and by the way, this is still very much in the design phase, so this is not fixed even. But basically what it needs to do is allow nodes to know how to verify, hey, this does look correct, right? So there's still debate on how we should do this because, with current Lightning channels, if I'm an attacker and I want to kind of spam the network with these channels that aren't actually channels, it's still going to cost me quite a bit because I have to actually construct these 2 of 2 multi-sig transactions, and if I ever want to spend from them, I have to put 2 big signatures on chain. So it actually does cost me something to spam the network with fake channels currently. With Taproot channels, that's not the case because 𝗂𝐴𝑚usig, 2 signatures becomes 1 signature. So I can very easily now create spam actually. So the big question we're kind of trying to answer now is, and this is still very much up in the air, is how are we gonna make sure that these outputs are bound enough to the Lightning context so that we can say, okay, cool, we trust that this is a Lightning channel, we're going to use it. Yeah, I don't know if I rambled a bit too much there.
No, that was great. That makes a ton of sense too. The classic, the old DDoS problem. Gotta love that one.
Can I jump in here?
Oh, yeah.
I have a follow-up question maybe. So, I mean, this space is about privacy. So are Taproot channels really private when I in parallel analyze the gossip of the Lightning Network, or I mean they should be announced, so I could kind of trace every channel, although they are now normal output as everyone else, but I could, when I in parallel check the gossip messages, there would be no change in my opinion, or?
Yes, that is a great point. So okay, so building on that, so yes, your private channels will look like any other output, right? If they're not force closed, they'll look like any other output. So yeah, but yes, for your public channels, you would be able to cross-reference with the gossip. So that is for gossip 1.5. So that's why well, that's kind of like the code name at the moment is gossip 1.5. But people have been speaking about gossip 2.0, which would be like the next step, and the idea here, and I think the idea, if I'm not mistaken, comes from Rusty and maybe Matt, is that you kind of use some leveraging. So you broadcast, you kind of prove you own one UTXO, and then let's say the UTXO is one Bitcoin UTXO, and then you broadcast that you broadcast that to the network, and you basically prove you own that, and that's going to give you the right to open channels up to 10 Bitcoin, let's say. But the idea there is that you can announce channels that with UTXOs that are fake, that are not real and so in that scenario, what you can imagine is let's say you have this super KYC'd UTXO that you've got from the exchange, and you can use that to prove to the network that you've got some like skin in the game, and then you can use all your very coin-joined UTXOs to actually open your channels, and then you announce fake UTXOs for those. You don't actually announce the real UTXOs there. But that, like I'm sure you can imagine, is quite a complex thing. And how do we, are we okay with letting people leverage like this? Because, so there's a lot of open questions there. But in that world, that would break that link between the gossip messages and the actual UTXOs a bit.
Oh, thanks very much for this detailed answer.
What do you think like the mechanism for proving the ownership of the UTXO could look like? Do you think it would just be like a signature, like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, I think the basic one would just be like we do today, a signature and a link to the actual UTXO, and then a fancier one would maybe be like a ring signature over the UTXO set at block X or something like that, just to show you have a UTXO in a single block, but I'm not sure if amounts are included in that. But yeah, I think the basic one people have been discussing is just leak one UTXO, prove it with a signature, and then the rest is hidden, yeah.
It's really advanced from the earlier idea of just yelling from the rooftops that you have the UTXO.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. Thanks so much for that answer, El. That was great. When do you think so it's just like a draft basically, like Gossip 2.0, or is it being actively worked on? What's like the status of it?
Yeah, so we're still in very early stages. So like I said, we're currently we've spec'd out Gossip 1.5, which is kind of like a midway point here, because the Gossip 2.0 is going to involve so much stuff. It's just, I don't think it's even scoped properly, fully yet. So Gossip 1.5, I think, can happen way sooner, and that would just be is very similar to today's Gossip, except that it's the taproot. It's the taproot equivalent, but you'd still be saying, hey, this UTXO belongs to me. And I think that can, it's very, like I said, it's very similar to today's Gossip. So I think once the taproot spec has landed, we can probably move very fast on the Gossip for it. Yeah.
Okay, so it's sort of dependent on the actual channels, taproot channels.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And what's the main thing would you say that needs to happen for that to really be implemented and work?
Do you mean taproot channels or Gossip?
Taproot channels.
Well, I think roast beef has pretty much got taproot channels working in LND, so it's just a matter of review there. I think there's a few things in the spec that needs to be ironed out, but I think it's as far as I know, it's working. Yeah, so I think next step would be get those few things ironed out, get interop with couple of the other implementations. I think they're all busy working on it as well. Yeah, so I'm hoping, this year.
Awesome. Yeah, maybe Dusty, do you know like what the status is over there at CLN is on taproot channels or?
Oh, on taproot channels? Yeah, I think 𝗓𝐶Gibbs has been working on it. I don't know what his progress is, but he does great work, and I'm sure it's going to be awesome soon. That's all I really got. Nothing specific. We should pull him for one of these talks one of these times to get a little more information on it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Could I jump in? I have a question or maybe a topic. I mean, we mentioned earlier that, for private channels, it's a huge boost, these taproot channels, for sure. And I was wondering how 𝗏𝗏 kind of handles, I guess that 𝗏𝗏 has also a lot of private channels, would make sense, but yeah, you can maybe answer this question first. But on the other hand, I would like to know whether there is a good strategy how like these LSPs could prevent those probings, because in Lightning there's these kind of, you route traffic, but it does not matter if you have 4 channels to one node. The Lightning protocol is designed that way that it will use either of those. So I'm not quite sure whether you can control and block some channels, but how does 𝗏𝗏 do this with private channels?
Sorry, is the question, how do we prevent probing?
Probing, especially for private channels, because if I would have built 𝗏𝗏, I would stick all my main liquidity in private channels.
Yeah, it's a good question. We don't have anything like super advanced preventing that at the moment, and luckily we haven't seen tons of issues there. So unfortunately, I don't have a great answer, but it's something we're constantly paying attention to and looking at. Really, our focus up to now has been on ensuring like payment reliability, improving payment success rates, and just sort of like scaling the system. So yeah, so frankly, this isn't something we've spent a lot of time on.
One thing you could do is turn on the alias SCID system. That's not on by default in LND, but it replaces the UTXO pointer in a private channel with an arbitrary identifier. And some people have done probing where they just randomly guess UTXOs and then try probes with those UTXOs referenced. And if you use alias SCID, I don't think that kind of a probing would work, and so they wouldn't be able to identify which UTXOs privately were used.
Interesting.
And it's just a config option to turn on.
And I can set these aliases also after I open the private channel, for example, and give them different.
No, it's negotiated at the start.
Ah, okay.
Awesome. All right. If anyone in the audience has any questions, just feel free to request to speak, and we can get you up here and have you ask a question. Next topic we had was taproot channels and submarine swaps. Maybe this would be a good question for Alex. What kind of benefits will taproot bring to submarine swapping?
Well, submarine swapping is not necessarily about channels so much, because in a submarine swap, you kind of don't know if somebody is doing a loop out and they're paying us off chain and we're paying on chain, we don't necessarily even know where the origination of the payments, what happened, so we don't know about that channel. But one thing it can help with is if down the road we get PTLCs, maybe there's less correlation of, is this a submarine swap at all? Something that we've actually already implemented taproot for Lightning Loop submarine swaps. So we've actually already taken the pre-image out of the chain, except in the uncooperative case. So I wouldn't say that there's necessarily a huge advantage of taproot channels to submarine swaps because they're just based on like the payment layer kind of things. But taproot itself is hugely beneficial to Lightning Loop and submarine swaps in general, and that's something that we've already deployed experimentally, and we'll make that a default pretty soon.
Awesome. Interesting. Okay, we got a question from 𝗟𝗫𝐺𝐿. Let me bring him up on stage real quick. Go ahead, man. 𝗟𝗫𝐺𝐿, you there, bro?
Yes, good day, LNCapital. Can you hear me loud and clear now? I think my network was fluctuating a bit. Can you hear me loud and clear now? Can anyone hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thanks. I mean, thanks for having me on your space. I'm 𝗟𝗫𝐺𝐿 Falodun. And the conversation has been great. But my question would have been majorly around how taproot integration will be extremely scalable with decentralized exchanges. I mean, the implementation of Lightning and the email kind of addresses have been something huge on the user's side, right? But viewing from my own opinion, I'm actually asking this question because the trend in the market right now and utility around Bitcoin is actually driving towards the decentralized exchange fixtures, especially on the transaction and market view. So I don't know if there's more like an elaborate way, not too technical, to like highlight the influence of taproot and how it might provide core solutions to these changes. I don't know if you get my question clearly.
I think I understood. Basically asking like how taproot could help a DEX, pretty much.
Exactly. That's more like you.
Yep. Yeah, maybe Alex or 𝗟𝗫𝐿 or 𝗟𝗏𝐿. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, taproot opens up a lot of doors on the script path. So you could kind of create like different kinds of scripts that maybe reflect decentralized trading. But submarine swaps also, by benefiting from taproot in terms of efficiency, I've seen a lot of people do swaps where they are going against another chain, some other asset. So like even though normally swaps are like Lightning to Bitcoin blockchain, or blockchain to Lightning, like there's other constructs. Originally, when I created submarine swaps, like as a service, I included other coins as well. It's not very difficult. So I think like those kind of things, maybe more escrow possibilities could be built in. And in taproot, the advantage is that when you can do key aggregation at the top level, the script can execute without costing a bunch of money. Like, oh, you don't have to represent everybody's key in there. And even better than that, something that we're working on with our like more advanced submarine swaps is that the HTLC output maybe never even hits the chain at all. So it allows for a lot more scalability there. So you could do tons of swaps. And the only time you can hit the chain is if there's kind of like a conflict. But we're only just now like really able to put those kind of things into like default production because we've really been depending on the Musumeci 2 spec to be finished, and now it has been. So I think that's kind of just beginning.
Wow, thanks, Alex. Thanks for that response. I naturally feel it's a gradual process, and with huge inflow of development on it, it's actually going to skyrocket adoption. Thanks. That's all I have for now, man.
Awesome. Thanks for coming up, Heritage. Cool. I think what would maybe be interesting for the audience, Alex, is if you could just like give a super high level view of what a submarine swap is for people.
Yeah, sorry. So the submarine swap is a way to kind of bridge the Bitcoin blockchain and the Lightning Network, or maybe an arbitrary blockchain. The idea is basically that you have this HTLC thing in Lightning. That's how all payments are relayed across the network, where I'll pay to your key plus a secret, and then if you never reveal the secret, eventually it will time out and I'll be able to take the money back. So it's just using that same concept that's used for all regular payments on Lightning and just extending it to the blockchain context. And what that allows you to do is kind of move between the two worlds. So like if you wanted to take money off of an exchange that didn't support Lightning and put it into your channels, you could work with a swap provider, and they would give you a HTLC address. You'd withdraw from the exchange onto the address, and then the swap provider would pull out from the address the funds on-chain and then send you the funds off-chain. It's a way to do it non-custodially because you are still atomically locked into that secret. So it's pretty commonly used as a bridge, but it helps you kind of like use the advantages of the blockchain. Like you don't have liquidity issues. You can send as much as you want. You don't need a path through the network to somebody. On-chain, there's a lot more security solutions. Like you can deposit it to your exchange. You can deposit it to your cold wallet. And then it also allows for getting more inbound liquidity because a lot of people on the network currently, like as the network is pretty small, they are receiving maybe more than they're sending. And so they need more inbound liquidity. So what they can do is send off-chain and receive the funds back on-chain. And that kind of resets their flow so that they can continue to do bidirectional Lightning.
Awesome. That's super cool. I had a question that sort of popped into my head while you're explaining that, which was, and maybe this is a good one for Dusty, like how could splicing like interoperate with submarine swaps? Could it make it more efficient?
Yeah, I think so splicing helps you manage the funds on your side of channels, but it doesn't help you manage the other side, the inbound liquidity side. And so things like submarine swaps and peer swaps are what's needed to make both sides happen. So I think in general, these tools there's no magic bullet tool that makes Lightning routing perfect. You need an arsenal of them. And the more tools you can put in your tool belt, the better off you're going to be. You should start off trying to do a circular rebalance, right? And then when that inevitably fails, because they always do, then you go down the list of things, increasing order of just, whatever's the cheapest and maybe have some time constraints, that kind of thing. And so I just think of it as the more tools you can add to your tool belt, the better. And that's one of them. So splicing, and there's a bunch more too that are all worth having.
Yeah, also so the peer swap is a form of submarine swap. Submarine swap is more like a generic term. But the potential there also is there's kind of the problem of change outputs with closing channels or reallocating funds on chain. And so one thing that I don't think we've seen explored too much yet is instead of creating change outputs, you could swap that change output to a swap provider who would then take that, and instead of giving you an UTXO that's kind of a burden to you, costly burden to you, you'd be able to give it to them and refill one of your channels. So it's kind of building that set of solutions to be as wide as possible. And the swap provider can have their own advantages, in terms of on-chain aggregation that can kind of work in tandem.
Awesome. If anyone else in the audience has some questions, just go ahead and request, and we can get you up here. It has been about an hour, so I mean, we could wrap it up. It's been a solid conversation so far. Oh, we got a question from Jackson. Let's see what Jackson's got to say. 1 second. Let me bring you up. All right, go ahead, man.
All right, I just got a quick question regarding kind of the differences between third-party custodial solutions, kind of compared with the competition of like centralized, bank, like central digital banking, and in that whole jungle, I think that there's potential fears that could arise, especially with splicing and taproot and stuff rolling out that could regard both making past technology obsolete in terms of Bitcoin, and as well as potentially opening different avenues for, hacking and just overly complicating different systems and making it harder for people to operate, or people who are operating now to continue. What do you think the biggest solution that you could offer to somebody who is, very concerned with the development of this, compared to, like what would you give somebody if they were reaching for, CBDCs opposed to something like Lightning Network, just because of the concerns of potential, enhanced complexity with, splicing and whatnot? What do you think the biggest solution to get people over that hump would be?
So you mean like if someone didn't choose Lightning or like Bitcoin, for example, and didn't want to use this, like a CBDC, like what would they go for? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like from like a user concern point of view, if somebody was perhaps worried about, more complex transactions and the potential of fraud, or, really, really complex understanding about, the systems of different nodes and stuff, what do you think you would tell that person as to kind of reassure them that, third party would not be something that's as dangerous as it could be interpreted as?
I think I understand what you're saying. So like, with all this complexity, how's the user at the end of the day assured that their payment's going to get from point A to point B, basically?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like I guess like it comes down to the idea of like an HTLC, which maybe we should just go into like, the bare bone, like get back to basics. What is an HTLC? And that's really interesting. So what do you guys think? Like, Dusty or Alex, like, just give a super like high level overview of the idea of like a hash time lock contract.
Oh, you mean the most complex part of Lightning? Just go for it.
I think I did say it, like that you're sending to somebody, but they also need to reveal a secret, or if they don't reveal the secret, there's a timeout where you get the money back. But the thing I think is like there are risks with building these things. Like, so I wouldn't paper over that. Like, it is complicated, and there are plenty of risks. The thing that we're kind of like thinking about is like the difference between systemic risk. So like, what if the central bank is compromised somehow? Like they make terrible decisions. That happens all the time. Versus individualized risk, an open source system where what if there's a bug? So it's kind of like, which risk do you want to choose? Do you want to choose the one where you put all your eggs in one basket, or where you kind of like rely on a diverse set of solutions?
I like to use an analogy for HTLCs. If you think about, just take United States, that's a country. Turns out there's about 40,000 judges in the United States. You could imagine a world where every time anyone wrote a contract and they signed it, they had to have a judge present to review the contract. And there are way too many contracts signed per day for that for the judges ever for that to ever be possible. There would be no legal system in the United States if that were the case. And you can use the same analogy with Bitcoin and think of on-chain Bitcoin as being the court system. It can handle a certain amount. I think it comes out to, I forget the number, about 40,000 per day or something like that. And if we had to have every single contract sign on Bitcoin, then on the Bitcoin main chain, Bitcoin wouldn't scale at all. So what you're doing is just like writing a private contract with somebody else. You're saying, hey, I'm going to do a contract that says like, you know, in the event something goes whatever, I'm going to give you this amount of money. And what we're doing is we're signing cryptographic contracts that are enforceable on Bitcoin. So the HTLC is essentially a little mini contract that I wrote between me and my partner that says, yo, I'm giving you this money in this contract. And because you could go to the court system and enforce it, we're going to act as if I actually gave you that money. And as long as everyone agrees to those contracts, as they do with regular contracts, then you're good. And if anybody violates that contract, then you just go to the court system and you settle up there. And that's how I like to think of HTLC as an analogy.
Yeah, that's an amazing analogy. And it seems like that's the whole point of Bitcoin, right? The inherent trust in the traditional financial system is a huge vulnerability. It keeps getting broken. Just literally a couple of weeks ago, same thing happened again. But that was an awesome analogy. Did that answer your question, Jackson?
Yeah, that was a wonderful explanation. Thank you, dude.
Awesome.
Cool. Let's go.
All right. Does anyone else in the audience have a question? Just go ahead and request to speak. We can get you up here. All righty, guys. Well, we got a question from V. Get him up here. V, go ahead, man.
Hey, I see you guys are, quite the experts in splicing and HTLC related stuff. I was curious, what were your thoughts on the recent hierarchical channels post to the mailing list? Alex or Dusty or anyone?
I feel like everyone I've talked to is like, yeah, I got like halfway through it. I didn't have time to finish it, and I don't really know what it says. It's like the average opinion, and everyone's just asking everyone else what they think.
Got it.
I mean, I think I put it in the category of these multi-party channels in general, right? If you want to have more than two people in one channel, what does that look like? And there's competing proposals, and this appears to be just one more competing proposal in that arena.
Yeah, I think like now that Music 2 has been like merged, that we'll see a lot of different kind of protocols. And like the big advantage of Taproot, is that you have this contract where you can go to court. But with Taproot, every time you specify the contract, generally you're putting at the top level a way so that if you and the other side could come to an agreement, you could kind of bypass a lot of the cost of resolving that contract. And like, that's kind of like how it even works in like the regular legal system. So like you can go to court and you can have a lengthy legal battle, but all the while you can say, what if we just settled? It would be cheaper. So I think like if you like take that if you think about that in an abstract way, that allows you to make all sorts of interesting kind of like off-chain models of like how you could like set up like child like relationships between other people, and then everything would be resolving off-chain because they could always just use a top-level agreement rather than like executing the contracts out. That's something that we're working on in more of like a simple way. I think a lot of times these things that are proposed are pretty complicated, so like I wouldn't expect to see them like in the next month or something. But we have like a working product that has customers, and we're looking to like reduce costs. So this is something that like we want to like start on in a simple way. And like down the road, I think it could get super complicated and interesting about like how do we get efficiency so good that we can onboard tons and tons of people or represent super complicated relationships between lots of people without taking up a bunch of chain space that makes it cost prohibitive.
Thank you.
And I would also generally add that, to put it in the words maybe from 𝗏𝗏, the creator of the Lightning Network, he basically said the current channel model is very fine when you have two parties. But as soon as because the states are asymmetric between those two parties, but as soon as you want to add another party in this contract, like maybe a channel of 3, it gets very complicated with the current model. So that's also to keep in mind when we talk about something like channel factories or this hierarchical channels, although I have not dig into this mailing post, but I guess it has same issues, but yeah, just in anticipation.
Alrighty, we got SDBTC up here.
Hey, what's up?
Go for it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for letting me up. I just had a question, kind of I guess a little more general question about Lightning. So right now I have a website that's using PGP to let users send encrypted messages back and forth and just store their private key like in their browser and cookies, right? Just super simple, like nothing special there. What I'm trying to figure out how to do is accomplish that using Lightning wallets. So like right now, the site has Lightning login. So you log in with the Lightning wallet. So what I'm trying to do is instead of also using PGP to encrypt their messages, if I could somehow use their Lightning wallet to do it instead, it would be a lot cleaner and the users wouldn't have to port around their private key if they use it in a different browser or something like that. Does Lightning offer any kind of API like that? And I know it's probably a pretty new question, so thanks.
Lightning itself isn't really necessarily concerned about like separate messaging that isn't just like, one peer talking to another, but like if you're looking for an API, LND does offer a 𝗓𝗏𝐽. So you could have all the people, represented by public keys, and then you could use the LND API to do a 𝗓𝗏𝐽 like shared key between them and then encrypt everything to that key.
What's the name of that?
You could also do it from the...
Sorry, go ahead.
I think it's called compute shared key. Sorry.
Compute shared key.
I think it's called compute shared key. Yeah, and that's also something that you could do in the browser via the LNC library. So it's like an npm package that you can install, and that allows you to have from the web browser make calls to somebody's running LND.
You said LNC?
Yeah, LNC. So there's a package on npm, and it's there's it uses WASM and JavaScript.
Gotcha. All right, appreciate it.
You could also just use Nostr. So there's lots of libraries for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I thought about that, but the reason that I didn't do it is now the user has to have a Lightning wallet and a Nostr set of keys, right? So they still have to port their private key around to use it in different devices.
Oh, I meant go look at the open source Nostr implementations and rip out the code that does what you want. Just use it for yourself.
Okay. Damn, okay. Cool.
There's lots of ways to do it, or whatever makes the most sense for you and what you're at. Do that.
Alrighty, guys. Any more questions from the audience? Just feel free to request, and we'll bring you up.
You could, while we're waiting, just to add on, you can go hardcore and just download 𝗏𝗏𝗶 P256K1 and then just use the actual raw cryptography to implement it. but that would be some work. You have to know C.
Alrighty, guys. Looks like we're kind of out of questions here, but any closing remarks you guys want to make, Dusty?
Sure. I'm just really excited about the future of Lightning. I think a lot of things are happening. I know, like, from an outsider perspective, it doesn't always seem that way, but I promise on the inside, there's so much going on, and it's just endlessly exciting. I'm really excited that bringing splicing to the network and like getting that all like finalized and put away is just wonderful. So I'm just couldn't be more pumped for what's coming. Let's go.
Let's go. Awesome. Any final remarks from you, Alex?
Yeah, I think like Al mentioned that taproot channels in LND already has a set series of PRs, and you don't necessarily need to just wait around for these like experimental stuff to arrive in your doorstep. Like, if you're really interested, you can check out all these PRs, you can check out all the code, you can run the test yourself. On Lightning Loop, we support taproot in experimental mode. You could drill into the code, see how it's working. I think like people maybe don't realize like that this like MUSIG2 signing is gonna like change everything. And if this is a good time to like be like the early adopter and take part in it right from the beginning. And it's also important to have people using it so that we can kind of get that feedback. It's not just like developers are making code somewhere and then they release it fully formed, working. It's a community effort. It requires a lot of people trying stuff out and like auditing and coming up with even like just their use cases that they need solved. So it's definitely like it's a group effort.
I love that. I want to piggyback on that. You could just definitely download the splicing PR and test it locally and play with that and give me your feedback. That would be amazing.
Amazing. Al, Ziggy, any final remarks you guys want to put out?
Nothing from my side. Also just very excited for what's to come. I think there's a lot to build. So yeah, let's do it.
Great. Ziggy, any last words?
Yeah, I'm currently most excited about Bolt 12 because we haven't talked about it right here, but it seems like also a major privacy improvement talking about blinded paths as mentioned in the thread. So I'm really stoked to see what's coming next.
Awesome. Yeah, it seems like everyone's pretty pumped on Bolt 12, but maybe that deserves its own space, honestly. Well, great. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for coming and giving us some of your valuable time today. And yeah, thanks so much for building what you guys are building. And
hey, thank you, man. This has been great.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Dusty. Cool. Well, it's been an hour 15 or so we're going to wrap it up there. But thanks, everyone, for stopping by. And